Yeah. Oh, I should have started with, I'm Amanda. It's nice to meet you.
Dave, but you already know that.
Um, yeah, I'm a researcher here
Right?
at Meta/Facebook, and I'm part of what we call this local civic team. So we focus on helping support like local community when it comes to things like groups and pages and so on. And so that's why I wanted to speak with you today about the groups that you're a part of.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, I've got a couple of points that I wanted to go over, but let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Um, Thanks for signing the research
Mhm.
participation agreement. A couple of points from that document. One is we intend to use what we learned today to help improve the products.
Okay.
And so what I learned from you will be shared with like personnel at Meta,
Okay.
like my people on my team, but it won't be shared outside of uh, Meta employees.
Okay.
So um, I'm not going to make like a commercial or a blog post or anything out of this.
No worries.
I'm going to be recording as a way to take notes
Okay.
and share info with my team. And I may have a team member or two who comes on the line just to listen, but it'll just be you and me talking.
Okay.
Your participation is entirely voluntary and you can choose to stop participating at any time. So let me know if
Mhm.
you need us to stop the recording or delete it. That is up to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Okay, that's my whole spiel.
Right.
But yeah, I could you tell me a little bit about you and about the Facebook groups that you're in?
As far as me, want to know about me, how deep you want me to go? I mean, what are you looking for?
I mean, since I'm interested in local groups, I'm interested in, the place you call home and what kinds of like local groups you're in.
Okay. As far as my usage of Facebook, been on it kind of almost since the beginning, although not under this login. So I actually
Okay.
left Facebook, kind of got fed up with it, hated
Mhm.
Facebook, wrote it off as just. We'll get into that in a bit. But then I was an admin for as the head of our HOA. I had that page that I was the admin for. So there's a local group for the subdivision, also a memorial page for a friend of mine who passed away from COVID early on. I had started that. And I've moderated other forums on Facebook over the years, but I'd cut back way on my usage, and I'd actually left for 6 months, and I really only came back for those reasons. Um, you want to know reasons why, or you want to get into it just to because I think it's good
Um,
feedback, frankly, for because it all
yeah,
ties
yeah,
together. So,
sounds good.
so my issue with Facebook is, and with social media in general, is there's a fine line to be drawn between everybody talks about free speech, but you're a public or
Mm,
your private platform. So I look at it as, I should be able to have free speech and say what I want. But then again, I'm in your living room. So if you don't like what I'm saying, you say, that's great, you can have your free speech, but you can do it outside, right? I get that and I respect that. My problem with Facebook has been, and where it really has cut into how much of the groups and local groups and things that I use and stuff, is that when there are policies that are too vague and when they're applied very clearly inconsistently.
mm,
So and that bleeds into the form, into the groups and the user groups and things because things that you'd think that are common sense aren't. And so knowing where the line is and what you can say and what you can't. I'll give an example. Someone having a discussion with me when I was using it actively and had a lot of friends and followers and stuff and you know talking about what's going on in the world today, right? And so talking about things, legislation around trans and this and that, and I make a simple comment of when you talk about gender, there's 1,000 years from now, if someone digs up my bones and
mm.
tests them, they're going to go, "Oh, this is a dude who looked about 6'4", and and so there's gender, and we're talking about how it's confusing for a lot of people, and where I think a lot of people have issue is when someone says, "Well, gender's fluid; it can be whatever you want, and it can change from day to day, and all these other things." And it's like, no, sexuality can be that. Like sexuality can be whatever you want. It's different at one point in your life versus another. But when we try to mix those two constructs and say, well, male versus female is now one of 57 options based on whatever you think that. It's like, no, that's not really how it works. I got locked out for 30 days for hate speech for saying that. So when I think about managing a group, it's like, well, what's the purpose of the group and what kinds of things can we actually talk about? Because things that most people would agree with, if you put it in the simple terms like I did, aren't allowed. If when I post a news article to Joe Biden making his famous, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. I mean, it was national news. He was on a radio talk show that was nationally syndicated. I got dinged 10 days for posting not even Fox News, but an MSN.com article about that incident that was taken down as hate speech. Yeah, so I look at that.
Or like linking to it?
Yeah, linking to MSN.com, do a news article from mainstream news about Biden said this. It was national news, and the only comment I made was, can you imagine the outrage if someone like Trump had said that? So regardless of what your personal politics are and whether you agree, but things like that, when a platform suppresses common sense things that, frankly, half of America is on one side and half is on the other, right? That, to me, before we get into the groups themselves and stuff, I mean, as a platform, that impacts how many groups I use and whether I even want to be on Facebook and manage groups, because saying things that you could normally say at the dinner table, even with friends and people that are of a different ideology, you can have those conversations, but it's like, not here. We're Facebook. We will immediately squash anything that we don't agree with. And to me, that it really takes away from the platform and the whole premise of Facebook, which was connecting people and putting people together and sharing information and things like that and sharing memories and stuff. I feel like that's how it started. And I think Facebook is still a good vehicle for those groups, but those underlying platform flaws are really kind of cutting into that. And that's why I feel like people are using it less and less. And it's a shame because you have nice tools. You have a good platform that anybody can access from anywhere, anytime to use these groups. Anyway, I know I went down that rabbit hole, but it was something that really changed how I use Facebook, including these groups.
Yeah, so what made you come back to Facebook?
Because I felt an obligation to the HOA and to my friend's memorial page. Because I was the admin of those, and everyone, I'm like the complaint department for the HOA. Oh. And I got on the HOA not to be a Karen. I got on the HOA not to tell people what to do, but because I didn't want to be told what to do. And again, should be common sense. Don't leave your trash out. If your grass is over your ankles, mow it, that kind of basic stuff. But I become the liaison for, talking with people and problems with the utility companies, all that kind of stuff. So for me, it's a good vehicle. Like, the technology is good, but I'm using it kind of begrudgingly, just because I understand what hate speech is, and there are things that are hateful and shouldn't be, a part of public discourse. But because of the political slant and let's just be honest, the very heavy bias, it really puts a damper on my wanting to use the platform for the things that you guys are actually really good at. Oh. That's why I went down the rabbit hole, because I feel like it is relevant that it's not just about maybe improving the specific tools in the moderate. If you want to bring more people in, and I'm guessing looking at the stock price and some of the things going on right now, you do want to get your viewership and membership back up and start cranking profits back up. I think you have to look at it holistically as a whole, not just, well, what tools could we add or what button could we add in the. Anyway.
That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
There's a lot of people out there like me that are kind of conservative on some issues and side with liberals on abortion and gay rights and things like that and other things, but we feel like we're always the ones getting the short end of the stick, right? So it makes me very hesitant. Like, do I want to invest any time, managing a platform here that seems to, in some ways, kind of not like people like me?
I'm taking copious notes,
that's
by
fine.
the way.
Yeah,
if I'm quiet, that's why I'm writing
all
of this down.
It's like she's either taking notes or I'm boring her to tears.
No, I'm typing as fast as my little fingers will go.
Sure.
I'll just write down the timestamp so that I can go back. Well, let me ask you some specific questions about the groups. Because I feel like some of these issues are going to come back around, and I'll ask you more about that in a minute. First off, the homeowners association, is that a public or private group?
That is a private group.
Okay.
Yeah, although people keep trying to get in to sell like duct cleaning services and dumb stuff all the time, solicitations, which I have to always be on guard to kind of keep out. But it's just there for the group. That's one group
Okay.
that I moderate. The group that's for my friend Joe, his memorial page is more open, although anybody can join, but it's not just public for anybody to post. You got to join it. But it is open to the public, whereas we're kind of more restrictive on the HOA to household, that live here only. But then a lot of the other groups that I'm have moderated for, like motorcycles or car stuff and things like that. Those are all been public groups, and I've
Okay.
moderated some of them.
What would you say are some of the differences between public groups and private groups that you've moderated?
Public groups are a mix of hodgepodge, a lot of scammers, a lot of you know people coming in and just trying to sell crap and stuff like that. So it's a bit more work keeping out the chafe and just focusing on, hey, we're here to talk about Mustangs, we're here to talk about Ducatis, or whatever it is that we're there. Whereas with the ones that are private, at least everybody's there for a reason. They know why they're there. They had to pass some sort of gatekeeper to get in, and so that one's usually easier. They're all there for the same purpose. They're all there for the same reason. It's easier to keep things on track and keep things, nice.
Hmm. How big would you say these groups are?
Oh, well, my groups, I mean, there's like 70 people in one, and they're both kind of small local groups like that. The
Okay.
motorcycle groups, I mean, I've been in groups with tens of thousands of people, members. So they've
Hmm.
been, pretty big ones, global, people from all over the world.
Okay.
Like some of the Triumph groups I'm in have got, 14,000 people in pretty much every country, probably.
Mm. When you see content from the more local groups,
Hmm.
where do you usually see it? Like in the main Facebook feed when you first open up Facebook, or do you have to go to that page or follow a notification?
I typically see it in my feed because I don't have friends. My wife sent me a friend request. I'm like, denied. I'm like, it's like I don't want to use it for any of the personal stuff because you go down these political rabbit holes and it's just frustrating and we covered some of that. Maybe we'll come back to it later, but so I don't have much in my feed. I don't have a single post on my page of anything because it's more trouble than it's worth a lot of the time,
Mm.
and it just leads to frustration. So I really just use it for the groups. So the only stuff in my feed typically tends to be one of those groups that I'm a member of, other than
Okay.
cramming political whatchamacallits down my commercials down my throat, or for some reason
Like
like
political ads?
oh yeah, like everything about Warnock, and it's like I'm never going to vote for this clown.
Mm.
Not that I think Walker's great, but either. But that's another story. But for some reason, Facebook thinks I'd be interested in vegan content. I'm like, what have I
Oh,
ever posted over the years that says that I'm going to be like a tree hugging vegan? That's how, it's like whatever you eat, what you eat. I'm gonna eat a burger. I don't care. But it's like that's the kind of stuff that shows up in my feed. I'm like, how is this relevant? What have I ever said or done that would indicate that this would be an interest to me? Um,
yeah.
I don't know.
Mm. Well, when it comes to the local groups,
Hmm.
what do you like about them?
It's simple. You do get a little bit of a sense of community. I mean, it's easier than walking around to people's doors and asking them what they want. I mean, it's very simple. If we moved in here, the builder didn't run high speed internet. We had like DSL until like 2 years ago, like telco
Uh-huh.
wire, DSL kind of stuff, like that was 10 years old. And these are new homes, nice homes. And so, being able to communicate with everybody quickly and say, okay, here's a poll. If I can get Charter or somebody come in here and lay fiber, how many people are going to sign up? We have to make it worth their while. They're not going to come in for two homes and have to run
Mhm.
cable underground under streets and sidewalks because the builder didn't have it done when the ground was all open up and they could just drop their wires in. So simple things like that. Like it's a really quick way to get out and find out whose dog is this? That's running through the
Mhm.
neighborhood, right? I mean, quick things, and everybody's phone goes off. So no matter what they're doing, they can go, boom. Oh yeah, that's Luke from the subdivision across the street. He's at this. Here's his number because we've called him 6 times already. It's good for that kind of stuff. It's good to very quickly get the word out that hey, there's a problem, or hey, we're thinking of doing this. What do you all think? And get feedback,
Mhm.
and you got metrics, and you got polls, and who responded to what, and what was the frequency and percentages, and that stuff's all very useful.
Okay, so you use the poll
Oh
functionality.
yeah.
Yeah. Do it sounds like you post sometimes. Do
Yeah.
other people post in the
Oh
group?
yeah. Yeah, people post all the time. This is for sale. What's going on with this? Hey, I've got a problem with this. It's just a
Mm.
community. It's a community message board.
Okay, yeah. Um, could you give me some example of kinds of things that people talk about in that group?
Yeah. Let's see. Boom. Winfield HOA. Give me 1 second. Stuff. It'll be sometimes things for sale. It's going to be, hey, everybody. Anybody else having problem with our internet yesterday? Because our internet was going down like left and right. And want to know, is it my problem? Is it my router that's funky, or is it everybody else? And 15 other people go, yup, exact same problem. Whose dog is this? Hey, I've got this. I was going to put it out in the trash, but if anybody wants it, they can come pick it up. Hey, does anybody have the color codes for the paint from the builder? Because I need to get the house repainted and I need to make sure the color code matches. Recommendations for carpet steam cleaning. All kinds of stuff. Here's somebody complaining about their neighbor not fixing their yard. We're having a party. We're going to be having a lot of people parked out in the streets, just letting you all know when you come in and you see cars everywhere. That's why. Sorry for the inconvenience. Bike for sale. Hey, someone's mail was delivered to my house, but there's no name on here. We're not sure where it goes. Is anybody expecting mail from this? I'm just scrolling through things here. All kinds of stuff. Me making a graphic showing people how to properly turn in the lane into the subdivision with a yes and a no, so that they're not almost cutting off the front end of my car every time because they don't know how to make a turn.
Oh,
Oh, and don't cut across because you almost hit people. Just little things like that.
yeah.
Hey, there's a party. What do we want to do for the annual get together? Should we rent a bouncy house for the kids?
Mm-hmm.
Whose cat is this? All kinds of stuff. I don't know, normal community stuff.
Do you find that you have to moderate very much within that HOA group?
A little bit. Usually when somebody manages to get in and they say they live here and then they immediately start spamming with solicitations and crap. And I got to go in there and get rid of them, clean it up. I go in and I put the questions, do you actually live here? Yes. Okay. When did you move in? What's the street address? And they'll put in some stuff. I guess they're actually going to the trouble to look at Google Maps to find a legit address.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's my next door neighbor, and he's been here for 6 years, and you're not him. So,
Yeah.
so I have to go through and do some of that stuff. There's been a couple times where people were putting in something and got into like an argument or something like that. And it's like, okay, I need to go and delete a couple things. It's just inflammatory, and it's something that should be handled offline. Frankly, if it's a dispute between two neighbors or something like that.
Yeah. What's kind of your philosophy of being an admin and how to moderate?
The same approach to the HOA. It's like, people should not be afraid to say what they're thinking. Well, if you're going to say something inflammatory or something derogatory, or there's a line, and I think most people tend to know what the line is. At least they should. Where like the HOA, we want to be the HOA that you never have to hear from. Don't leave your trash out. Don't have a boat out in front of the yard for a month. Don't park in the street overnight. The basic stuff that most people that can afford a $500,000 house, which I know you're in California, that's probably like a shack somewhere. But here in Georgia, houses that are $400,000 to $800,000, that's like 4,000 square foot, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom, homes. If you can afford a house like that here, take care of it. Don't be a knucklehead. If you're hearing from us, it's because you're not doing the bare minimums to just, be considerate to your neighbors. You're leaving your dog out all day. You're not mowing the yard. There's weeds everywhere. We want to be the group that you don't have to hear from. And if you are hearing from us, it's because you very clearly were being a knucklehead. So I kind of take that same philosophy here. I don't want to tell people what to do. Say what you want. But if you cross a line and where most people are going to go, all right, that's uncalled for, well, then I'm going to have to step in, right? My hope is that most people are adults and we can be civil to each other. And even if we don't agree with each other, we can realize that, not everyone's going to agree with everything. It would be a very boring world to have this echo chamber where everyone just goes, yup, me too. It's like we should
Oh,
exchange ideas and be able to have differences, but be adult about it. You know?
yeah. Do you remember any posts in the group that you thought were particularly good or helpful or that you liked?
Um, just people going out of their way to help other people. Someone has a need
Mm,
for this, and someone steps up and says, "Yeah, I got you," and help people out. I mean, that's what community's supposed to be about, right?
mhm.
Um, people should be self-sufficient and stuff. It shouldn't be it takes a village to do everything, but there is a time when people got to collectively help each other out. Balance, like everything else in life, there's got to be balance. It can't be too much of one and not enough of the other.
Mm. Yeah, if you could wave a magic wand, what kind of posts would you want to see more of in the group?
Um, I don't know that I desire to particularly see anything. I mean, it's there for people to communicate as needed. If there's problems, to get resolutions. I mean, less problems for me to solve would be nice, but people getting along and doing what they're supposed to be, so I could log in and go, cool. There's nothing for me to do. Everything's awesome. Like that would be my goal. But
I see. Yeah.
seeing people communicate and be neighborly and actually know who their neighbors are and communicate and stuff like that, it gives them a good vehicle. I mean, it's not as good as going next door to talk to your neighbor, right? But at
Hmm.
least it's a way that you're aware of who people are, and people are keeping an eye out, like, hey, there's something suspicious. Did anybody catch this on their security camera, kind of thing? Oh yeah, I did get video of the car and I got a license plate number. Okay, great, because they stole a package off my porch. Like those kinds of things. It's
Mm,
like you don't want to have to read those things, but at least you're reading about that there was a resolution and someone pitched in to help. So
mm. You ever seen any posts about emergencies, whether that's like weather, storms?
yeah, a couple times. Yeah, if there was like a
Mm,
tornado watch or some high winds. I mean, we did have like the tail. I mean, we're pretty far inland here. We're towards the mountains in north of Atlanta, but there's been
mhm.
times when like a hurricane ripped up the coast, and I had like a 60-year-old oak tree. I'm talking like this big, fell down the hill, off the hill into my pool.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So I woke up and well, in the middle of the night. I heard this weird noise. I'm like, oh, what's that? I look out. And normally the underwater lighting on the pool is on, and I'm like, where is it? And then I see like, oh, I can see twinkles of it coming through branches. I'm like, oh, that can't be good. So, so there was,
wow.
so we've had some storms come through and do some damage, and just people, hey, does anybody need anything? Power's out, making a run to the store.
What about do people ever discuss public spaces or public services? I'm thinking about like roads, libraries, parks, permits.
Um, some of that stuff, like if someone's looking to do something in their yard, landscaping, things that would need HOA approval. Talking about like the retention ponds that have to be maintained up to code and stuff like that. And if there was a problem, we need to get the landscapers down in there to fix something to make sure it's compliant. Some of the utilities, like, hey, our internet sucked for the first 5 years. We're on basically one step up from dial up. What do we got to do to get
Mm,
broadband in here? Which we finally did. So that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and then do you ever see any posts about local issues? Which I mean in a pretty broad sense, like anything that people might have an opinion about locally.
Sure. One that you may have actually heard of nationally. So there was a church. Well, I use that term loosely. A church out of Mexico, La Luz de Mundo. Do you remember LLDM? There was a. He was the guy who you're in California, right? You said.
Hmm.
Yeah. So your your
Yeah.
your attorney general. Actually, he just got sentenced. I believe he had the record holding for the highest bail amount ever set in the state of California,
Whoa.
for like child sex trafficking, all kinds of horrible stuff. It's this strange church that was started in like the 20s in Mexico by a former general who decided him and his wife wanted to found a church, and he's the 13th apostle of Christ, and if you want to get to heaven, you got to go through him, kind of thing. It's
Uh-huh.
without calling it a cult, it's basically a cult. And they were looking to move into our town and set up this massive compound. They bought like 350 acres of land. They wanted to build in a walled city within our city that would be pretty much for members only. Go Google LL, like Larry DM, David Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, they were in the news all over the place. In fact, I had a sit down with HBO documentaries because we were the only community where they've gone in to build these compounds around the country. We were the only town that actually fought them off legally and kept them out of here.
Wow.
And so, unfortunately, I was informed about 2 weeks ago that my footage got cut, didn't make it off the editing
Oh,
floor. But I was like, still, I got to go sit there in like a set with them for a day, and because I kind of became the face of um, the resistance, let's say.
oh,
So,
wow.
because they were like, who wants to talk to this guy from Channel 2 News in Atlanta? And I'm like, well, I'm the big mouth and I'm in sales and stuff for a living, so I'm used to presenting and
Mhm.
being in front of people. I don't care. So, yeah, I've sat there. So I became like this unofficial face of the movement to keep them out. So, getting the news out, and actually, we use Facebook a lot for that because there was a
Oh,
page set up specifically for that that was expanded beyond the HOA to the whole area because they were just a wacky group with a really deplorable track record and allegations of
mhm.
all kinds of stuff, which eventually he did just get convicted, I think, in the last 6 months on, which was good. But also, wherever they go, they kind of take over the town and buy the businesses and homes and then just write it off as tax exempt church property. The
Wow.
traffic and stuff. They have like these festivals where it's the City of Light. This was going to be their global headquarters in this little town of Flowery Branch, Georgia, where they were going to have, they might have 100,000 people show up for a couple days. We don't have the roads for that. We don't have the infrastructure. We're going
Wow.
to be footing the tax bill. So it was like a big problem. And Facebook was actually, I would say, pivotal. So despite my political ideological differences with Facebook and your approach to things, Facebook was actually kind of pivotal in getting the word out and organizing thousands of people in all the surrounding communities to get the word out to people understand what was at stake here. And eventually, we were the only ones all around the country in the last 15 years that have successfully kept them out.
Wow.
So you can get a gold star for that, Facebook.
I mean, I'm also glad for your community.
Yeah, it would have been a disaster. The traffic, the taxes going up, the impact on the value of our homes. It would have been a nightmare. And once they've gotten into communities, they typically don't get out. I mean, there was a place in Texas where they got approval to build this ranch that was going to be like open to the public and a petting zoo and all these other. It just became a compound. There was nobody was allowed in. They never finished the project. It became this compound and one of these like little palatial estates for the leaders of the church and stuff like that. So they come in under one premise and then they just kind of do what they want. And so we saw the history and all the allegations and stuff, and we're like, we don't want any of that here. And I certainly don't want the traffic's already bad enough. We certainly don't want the hit to our infrastructure. So
You said you set up a page for it.
yeah, it
How
was
did
like
you get the word out to surrounding communities?
someone else helped with that one. I was a moderator on that, but I didn't start that, even though I became the de facto face of the opposition, I guess. But it was Flowery Branch Strong or something like that was the name of it. I haven't been on it in a couple of years. Actually, that one had a bunch of drama too, because there was a couple people on there, like any group. When you make it open to the public, you get a few yahoos, and so there was this woman Millie that was felt she was a warrior of Christ and everything was about fighting Satan's battle and all this stuff. It's like, can you just keep it to the legal stuff, please, and leave the mumbo jumbo out of it? Like, this is not. I'm agnostic, so I don't have any religious convictions. I just didn't want the hassle of the group coming in and disrupting everything and having this be a
Mhm.
focal point for like, everything. One of the guy's brothers was in a cartel. It's just all this kind of stuff. It's like this is just a lot of bad news that we don't need. So that group I left after a while because then you did get some of the we're in the Bible Belt down here, so you get a
Mhm.
bunch of the folks that are like really out there religiously and stuff, and then like stop making it about that. You can believe whatever you
Okay.
want, but when it comes to having to fight something legally, you got to keep it to the facts and what are the tax implications, what are the implications on our housing prices and going down and depressing the area and crime. Those are the things you got to focus on. You can believe whatever you want over there, but trying to rein some of those people in was a little bit of a chore. So I eventually
Mm.
left the group. It was just I figured I'd done
Does
my part.
Flowery Branch have other groups?
I'm sure there are. I mean,
Okay.
as a city, I'm sure there are, and I mean that's where the Atlanta Falcons have their training camp here. I mean, there's all. I mean, it's a cool little town. I'm sure there's other stuff going on.
Yeah. It just sounds like you're not necessarily a part of other Flowery Branch groups.
No, like I said, I left Facebook for good, and I only came back because I felt obligated to run the couple pages that I had
I
committed
see.
to. If they were more welcoming, everyone's about diversity until it's diversity of thought, and then it's can't have that. And I'm like, all right, well, whatever.
Mm. Um, I'm wondering in the HOA group, do you ever see posts or discussions about elections, voting, or politics?
Not really. I think because it is such a polarizing thing these days, most people just, it may be a question like, hey, where's the local polling place? Used to be at the church down the street. Now, for the midterms, it wasn't. It was over on Lake Lanier Island. So it was a couple miles away instead of like walking distance. So things like that, but not too much politics. And we kind of prefer it that way because as the underlying theme here of the bias and stuff, one side will be able to pretty much have carte blanche and say whatever they want. If someone else brings up a counterpoint, you got a 50-50 shot of getting your post taken down by Facebook for saying something that's, not approved. And we're not talking, and I'm not talking about things that are like Alex Jones wacko kind of stuff. I mean, we're talking about, like I said, saying there's two genders and sexuality could be whatever you want, and that's fluid. Let's keep the things separate so we're on the same page. Hate speech. You're like, huh? That kind of stuff. It's just, to me, it's just silly. And I know it's algorithms, but people have to program algorithms,
Uh,
and people say, oh no, there's no bias, there's no this and that, but it's like, if you look at the SEC filings for the 2020 election, I think it was 91 or 92% of Facebook, and it was 99 point something for Twitter of the employees that donated to one party. And we both know which one that was. So you can't have in any organization that kind of political bias on the behalf of the people running things and working there and not have it show in the product. Just my humble opinion. But there are some stats to back it up. So plus my own personal anecdotes of just really. I have a friend who conservative Puerto Rican, but he is very conservative. He got banned for 30 days for bullying because someone was giving him a hard time about something, and he said, "Stop being a silly goose." They said that was bullying. I'm like, you know how many times my mom's called me a silly goose growing up? Don't be a silly goose. It's like, it's just crazy.
mm,
I have hundreds. I have hundreds of stories like this that I've seen it, and it's like, ugh. And that's why I gave it up for a while, and then I fell off the wagon and came back,
mm.
but only in a very limited capacity. And I wish it wasn't
Well,
that way because I actually there's a lot of good things Facebook could do, but they've got to be a little bit more. You got to set standards that are fair and equitable, and they have to be applied equitably. Um,
mm,
That's my biggest issue. It's not that you have rules. I sign up, and that's what I'm signing up for. But when you see it clearly that someone saying someone being a silly goose is bullying, but if you go to any of the Antifa pages where they're calling for violence and planning riots, that's okay. That's protected by free speech. But saying someone's a silly goose is not, and you're like, something's off here.
mm.
It's too consistent to be, anything other than a bias. I wish you guys would get back to being a little bit more level-handed, because I think your membership would go up. A lot of people, and there's a lot of people like me that, you could say we're conservative, but it's like you could be pro-gun and pro-lower taxes and enforcing a border more effectively while still being pro-choice, while still being pro-legalization for pot, while still being for gay marriage, and treating
Mm,
people nice. People like me, I think, are probably the norm. There's no side has a monopoly on being right.
mm,
Anybody that thinks one party has all the answers is a fool. The Democrats and liberals are going to have some good ideas, and they do, and they're also going to have some lemons, and my party's certainly going to have lemons too. It's like a smart person should be able to look at both and cherry pick the best ideas from both sides and come together and say, here's your ideas that are good. We're going to throw the ones that suck in the closet over there. Here's your ideas that are good. And between the two of us, we got kind of the best of both worlds. But you feel like you can't have that in today's social media platforms. Look at how Musk is being treated. 6 years ago, everybody loved him. He was the darling on the left because he's done more for EVs and renewable energy and electric cars and a green movement than any person who has ever lived. And he's a leftist. He's a liberal. But in today's world, he comes out and says, but free speech is important, and that's the thing to remember with free speech. It's like, especially when you're talking legally, free speech is not only to protect popular speech. Popular speech is never questioned. Popular speech you agree with is never under attack. It's unpopular speech. It's sometimes things that make you feel uncomfortable. That's what it's supposed to cover. You should be able to speak your mind. Doesn't mean there can't be ramifications. And if you say something libelous, then there's consequences. But I think a lot of people look at social media and the things that you have and the reach that you have and the things that you could do really well and that you do well get hampered and held back because it's become a political tool in a lot of ways. If I know what Zuckerberg said about his, the reasons why and why he regretted, squashing the Hunter Biden laptop story, for example. And I know, what the lawyers told him to say. But I think if we're all honest with ourselves, if it had been Ivanka Trump's or Eric Trump's laptop with a bunch of hard data and texts and emails and pictures and all that kind of stuff, do you think Facebook and Twitter would have said, oh, no, we can't have that out there. We're gonna suppress that because we don't want it to hurt Trump's chances? It's like, does anybody believe that? Of course not. So I'm talking your ear off on this, but it's something I'm kind of passionate about because I think you could do a lot more good in the world. You could still have standards. You could still have limits. But you kind of have to leave some of the political ideology at the door. If you want to address the masses are pretty much, our country is a 50-50 country. 1 year, our side has a couple more votes and we win. The next year you have a couple, but when you alienate half the population, in effect, you're really capping your market reach, your revenue, your advertising potential. There's a lot of people like me that are leaving in droves. And so I think that's a shame.
I can tell how passionate you are about it, and I do certainly appreciate how candid you're being. It's nice to hear.
I'm glad that for the first time in my life, someone at Facebook's ever listened to anything I've had to say. I'm not going to lie, right? I mean, but it is. I don't think I'm anything out of the ordinary. I don't think my views are in any way extreme. I don't particularly like Trump as a person. January 6th was an absolute debacle and was stupid, and I've criticized my party for that kind of nonsense and stuff. But it's like, I hold both sides accountable because, again, they both have good ideas and they both got stupid ideas. But if I don't feel invited and welcome to where I can come in and have an honest, non-hateful, you may not agree with it, you might hate what I said, but it doesn't mean I'm wrong. But if I feel like this platform has it against me, it's going to make me not want to use it. And that means I don't get the benefit of managing these groups or widening my audience or anything like that. And you're losing money on revenue, on ad revenue. And we know that because we see what your stock price is doing and what's going on right now. And so I think there has to be a better balancing act between, everybody's got their own opinions. Everyone's got their bias. And I'm fine with a bias, if you're open about it. Fox News leans to the right. We all know that. They kind of admit it. But you look at MSNBC and CNN, who are just as far left as Fox is right, but they're like, oh, no, we're completely in. Stop. Everybody has a political bias. Everybody has a belief. And when you lie about it, and you say that, well, we're not, suppressing with algorithms, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, and we have thousands of examples every day of it happening, and it's right there, and you can look at it. It's like, it takes away your credibility. It makes people not trust you. So if you're going to have a bias, own it. You hear that, Mark?
Well, there was an idea that I wanted to run by you.
Go for it.
Specifically to do with local groups.
Sure.
So this at this point is just an idea. It's nothing that's been built yet. We're still trying to figure out whether this is a good idea, how it should work, stuff like that. And the idea is this, it would be some sort of, it would say essentially, hey, admin, here are some local posts from your local government agencies or nonprofits. Are any of these things relevant to your group? Do you want to post any of these in your group? And I'll show you kind of an example of what I mean by that. So it would show you, say, a feed of things from, say, your local community center, your local fire department, and give you an option to share things in your group. And I'm wondering, what do you think about this?
I kind of like it because it's bringing things to my attention that I might not otherwise be aware of, but it's also not. It's still leaving me in control whether I want to put it in there or not. If I think it's relevant or if I think it's helpful, rather than just automatically injecting and spamming my group that may or may not care or may or may not want it there, right? So I don't have a problem with saying, hey, here's some things you might like. I can either go, yeah, share, or I can go, nah, whatever, and keep scrolling. As long as as long as I'm the one that, has I'm the gatekeeper. It doesn't bother me. There might be things that are useful. I might say, oh wow, there's a car show this weekend. I had no freaking idea. Great, I have nothing to do tomorrow. Let's go, right? I like it.
Would either of these sort of example posts be relevant in, say, the HOA group, or is that not quite the right fit?
I mean, in these particular examples, yeah. I mean, because it's not just for HOA business, it's just for HOA members, it's for the community. So the deciding factor of whether you're in or not is whether you're a paying member of the HOA and you're a member of this subdivision. But it doesn't mean that it's for HOA business only. There could be other things, and if it's something else in the community, and some people will post that there's a car show. They will post that there's something else going on in the community, things like that. So, yeah, I wouldn't think that this would be inappropriate or out of place in any way.
Okay. Would you post something like the first one to the HOA group personally?
I might. Yeah, I mean, I know that there's some people that might. I mean, if based on what I know of the people that are here, if it's something that I think, it's at least likely that some number of people are going to get a benefit or be interested. Yeah. It probably also would drive more people to be more, because they're going to get alerts and stuff like that. So for us, and I guess for you, it would also then drive more adoption or more utilization of the tool, which then drives more ad revenue. So there's a benefit, obviously, to Facebook. So I see it as one of those things where probably win-win, as long as it's not too much. But again, the balancing act, right? Where do you give people additional things or value that they may not have been aware of, but not shoving it down their throat, or not making it so much that someone goes, look, this is too much, and they just turn it off because they don't want to deal with it because their phone's going off every 3 minutes. You got to find that fine line.
Yeah. Do you happen to know if any of the organizations in your community, say like the fire department, police department, whether they have Facebook pages?
I'm sure they do. I'd have to look, but again, I really do limit my use at this time, until such time as Zuckerberg takes my phone call and we can hammer out some of these details and changes that need to be made. Right? No, I'm kidding, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure that I have it in the past. I guess I have seen that stuff. I remember when I was actively using it, I must have liked something at some point, so I saw, Athens Clarke County Police Department, posting stuff. And so I have seen some of those things out there. So I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah. Would something like this second post, if it's a fire alert, to what extent do you think that would be helpful to the members of your HOA?
I would think if it's anything about imminent danger, there's a tornado about to touch down, get in your basements, something like that. I would have to think if it's something along the lines of fire alert, weather related, severe thunderstorms, hail, whatever. I mean, who wouldn't want to know that that's coming? You don't want to be going, what's that whooshing sound? And then you're like, where's my roof?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be nice to have a little advance warning.
Mm. Do you guys currently like do you get any phone alerts? I know some people are signed up for services where they get text alerts about stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that I don't know. I mean, I
Mm.
know it sounds horrible, but I'm pretty sure everybody else does the same damn thing, which is turn off the Amber Alerts on your phone because
Uh,
3 a.m. in the morning, your phone going off, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. So yeah, yeah, I'm sure some people do. I don't personally.
mm. How do you normally get local news?
Um, Good question. Do I? I mean, when I'm working and stuff like that, a lot of times I'll have Fox News on or MSNBC, just to kind of see what the other side's saying, and I might have things scrolling by. Um, Usually to be on like my Google feed on my phone. Honestly, that's probably where I would get more of it. Um, if you're using an Android device, you just swipe left and you have an automatic full page news feed of what's going on, and you set up your preferences, local, technology, automotive, whatever your entertainment, whatever things are interesting to you, and you just got stuff popping up all the time, seeing what's going on. That would be probably
Do you
my
get
primary.
much like local news, like for your area of Georgia?
Not as much. I probably focus more on bigger national news type stuff.
Mhm. You know, one of the other things we're wondering about with this thing is how should we define local? And I'm wondering for you, if you were, wanting to define content that was actually relevant for the HOA group, how would you define local?
Well, anything from Georgia on down to the county or town. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, because I mean, if it's next door, I mean, you probably depends on what it is, but something happening in Atlanta, it might be important to know. Okay, Biden or Harris is coming to town. Okay, the traffic's going to be a freaking nightmare. Don't go anywhere near Atlanta that day, right? So it's
Ah,
something to be aware of, but as opposed to, oh, there's a shooting down the street, or something like that, right? That hits a little closer to home. So I guess it depends on what it is we're talking about.
I see. Do a lot of people like commute into Atlanta from where you are, or?
I think so. Yeah, I used to. I've been
Mm.
working from home for 10 years, 11 years. So
Oh yeah, even before the pandemic.
yeah, so nothing changed for me other than I didn't have to fly anywhere, which is good because I hate flying.
Mm.
Hate the hassle. Well, I hate the hassle of airports. Flying's fine, and getting somewhere cool, like go to Aruba or something, is nice. But I just hate dealing with the traffic and airports and all that crap.
Totally agree.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, we're probably gonna have to travel for 2 years. I'm like, awesome.
Well, I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to ask you about with regard to this mock-up here. One other question I
Mhm.
have, I kind of showed this to you as, say, something that we show to admins
Okay.
and have the admins scroll through and see what's relevant. Another way we could do it is show it to group members um, and see if they think that anything's relevant and share it to the group. Now, if you have post approval turned on, post approvals would still be on.
Yeah, I
But I'm
don't.
wondering,
Yeah,
do you
I
see
don't.
pros and cons to either of those?
Um, what I wouldn't want to see is 15 people see it and go, oh, that might be interesting, and they all post the same damn thing, right? So again, you gotta. It's like anything else. Like if you make it too much or too cumbersome, it becomes counterproductive. I'll give you an example. Um, when the whole idea of having passwords on things is for security, and they tell you don't write it down, don't do this, don't leave it on a post-it next to your monitor, all that crap. But then you go and work for a company and they've got 17 different systems and they don't have single sign-on and they're all different passwords and they have to be updated monthly to something that's never been used before. You make it so cumbersome because we got to be so secure. What ends up happening? You make it too cumbersome. Person's like, I can't remember all this shit. They write it down on a post-it. They put it there. So in order to, so that's I kind of use that as an analogy. You want to make things better, or you want to provide something, but if it becomes too much, people go, and it turns them off, and then they don't use it, and then they don't get the benefit of it than if you had spoon fed it to them or given it to them in moderation. So you want to control that and make sure that, like I said, I don't need 15 or 20 people all seeing the same thing and going, oh, this might be useful. And then my phone's going ding, ding, ding with 20 copies of the same freaking thing. That doesn't help me. At that point, I'll get annoyed and I'll go, we're turning on post approval.
Mm.
You know, and then it's going to wait until I decide if it wants to go, which defeats the whole purpose of you wanting to push that stuff out there. So again, find that line where the benefit doesn't become an issue for people just because of the sheer volume or the complexity or, you know, whatever it is we're talking about.
Do you generally get a notification for every post in the group?
I think I do. Yeah. It'll tell me if I look at my phone, it'll say someone posted something new in Winfield, the name of the group.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm getting towards the end of my list of questions for you.
No problem.
Has anything else come to mind that you wanted to say but haven't had a chance to yet? Here, I'll stop sharing.
I mean, like I said, my biggest problems with the platform are just there are times when people post stupid, hateful things. And it's absolutely not only within Facebook's right, but I think their obligation to squash that stuff and stamp it out. The problem is, like anything, it goes too far and people's personal opinions come into play and then they push that on others and stuff. And I think why Facebook has suffered is because it's created in a large way, an echo chamber where one side is allowed to kind of say whatever they want. I have seen, you know, when I think about the dumb, just idiotic thing, and I'm the kind of person, if I say something that's over the line, I'll go, you know what, my bad. I was angry or I was being insensitive, didn't think about it from that angle, and okay, you know what, I'll apologize for that. But I look at the things over the years and I'm like, these are stupid things. And when I see somebody else repeatedly posting how they hope Trump dies in a fiery plane crash or someone shoots him, you know, whether you agree with Trump, Trump's an ass. We all know that. We could talk about his job performance, and that's a different discussion. But as a person, we all knew who Trump was for the last 30 years, right? The guy's you know, he's an insensitive prick in a lot of ways. But sitting there talking about sitting president of the United States, and while the person's not threatening them, saying things like that, and those posts were allowed to stand for months. I'd go back and check and go, did that thing ever get flagged? No. But calling someone a silly goose, posting a link to, you know, Biden saying something, that to me is the biggest problem. And people try to say, oh, there's no bias. That's easy to say when the bias matches your own, because you don't see a problem because it doesn't affect you. When the other person, when you make a point and someone makes a counterpoint, and it may be something just factual. Let's say you're talking about something about race. Right? Let's take a sensitive subject, and you're talking about, you know, let's say you're talking about why people of color believe that the police are more against them, and they're talking about institutional racism, and you might make an argument and say, well, if a police person's job is to go and fight crime, they go where the crime is. The crime tends to be, and you could pull up FBI's Uniform Crime Report, the UCR. It's posted every year on the government website where you can look up violent crimes by offender, by weapon, by type, by level, by race, by all ethnic, all that kind of stuff. And you can say that, you know, 53% of all homicides in the U.S. are committed by black males aged 17 or 15 to 49, something like that. So it's 4% of the population committing 53% of the crime. It just is what it is. We can have a discussion on why and economics and stuff, but when you say something like that to somebody and go, well, maybe the reason cops have more of an attitude towards a specific, there may be something else going on. And that's a candid discussion that educated people should be allowed to have. And we can discuss the whys and how we got there, but those stats do exist. The fact that Facebook would flag that and say that that's hate speech, and it's like, that's Obama's Department of Justice's numbers. They're official. Like, you can go to the FBI and it's there. Like, we're just having a discussion about a trend, but because somebody doesn't like it, I get censored. I'm not saying but someone that would say that would get censored. The other person thinks, oh, well, that was the right thing to do because that goes with what I agree with. So I don't think there's any bias. Everybody looks at the world around them with themselves as a reference point, right?
Mm.
And you believe that nobody thinks that they're the wacky one. No one thinks that they're the one that's off base. No one wants to think that they're wrong. I'm wrong on a lot of things, like anybody else. I think I'm right on a lot too. But when they look at that and they think that the bias isn't real, well, that's only because you're not on the receiving end of it. To half the country out there, we're talking hundreds of millions of people, it is very real, And so I think that's where social media companies and even corporate America, they put this big emphasis on diversity. Everything's about diversity and inclusion. That should include diversity of thought or ideology. I think that when you talk about diversity, that's the most important one. If I'm hiring sales reps, I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're gay. I want the best person that's most friendly and who's going to sell the most. I want the person that's going to build the best widget. I want the person that's going to be best at running in and saving a woman and a cat from a burning fire, right? I want the person who's the best for the job. If they happen to check a box on a diversity scorecard, I guess great. But, a wise man once said that we need to be judged by the content of our character and what we bring to the table and not the color of our skin. And yet when I look at diversity and inclusion policies, it's all about these things that Dr. King would say don't really matter. It's about you as a person, not what box you check. And I think that we need to embrace diversity of thought to a point. If you got a Klan member yelling some racist shit or whatever, kick them off. I will be right there with you. I'll push the damn button. But that's my biggest issue with social media is that it's become this area where, and I think the mindset is, if you create an echo chamber where everybody agrees, and it's only by virtue of the fact that the people who disagree are kicked out or silenced, it's kind of like if the media, every day there's somebody shot and killed. Now, 85 million of us legal gun owners managed to go through yesterday without shooting anybody, right? It's not the norm for people to go around shooting people, although it does happen every day. But if all you hear in the media are the bad stories, not the person who protected their home, saved their wife when someone broke in, or a woman who was being raped, defended herself. If all you hear are the negatives, after a while, you're going to assume that the negatives are all there is to hear. And that's not true. And so I look at social media and how they play a role in American politics the same way. And I know that that's part of the goal. If you're only allowed to hear one message, some people might go, well, that's all there is to hear. And there's not. There's two sides to everything. Sometimes I'm going to be right. I'm going to guess just statistically, based on where you are and the company you work for, that you're probably on the other side politically, even though I bet you we do agree on some things. But I'm going to be right sometimes and you're going to be right sometimes. But I wouldn't ever try to control and say, well, you shouldn't be allowed to have that opinion. And you shouldn't be allowed to say that. I wish that Facebook says that they embody these things. Facebook says that they uphold these ideals and things. But when you look at the practice of it, and Facebook's not unique in this, I'm not beating up on you guys. You just happen to be the one that's actually taking my call. So, people say one thing and then they do another. And I think the average person sees through that after a while. And I think that's why a lot of people are deleting their accounts. A lot of people are walking away from social media. They're tired of feeling like they don't matter. We matter to your advertisers, 50% of the country, So, no, that's what I think. So, I think there's got to be a way to have these conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to have these conversations as adults and stuff, and I don't know. It would be nice if
I
we
really
were.
do thank you for being so candid and telling me all of that. It is good to hear, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and the irony here is you're listening to it, but if I posted a lot of this stuff, we would talk about crime stat. There's things that we talked about today that if I posted that, you're listening to it as someone who's most like, I think you did agree. You consider yourself a Democrat or a liberal, progressive. Is that your? Are you kind of in the middle too?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you and I could have this conversation, I've had this conversation with diehard liberals. But if I had posted a lot of the things that we just talked about that you probably heard and maybe you agreed, maybe you didn't, but you probably didn't see anything wrong or objectionable about it. But those very same words, some cases verbatim, were taken down and censored, or I was locked out of my account for a month. And I'm like,
Uh,
for what? Like, I'm not saying anything hateful. So, I mean, it is what it
well,
is. It's your company. You guys can do what you want, and I can either choose to put up with it or go elsewhere. But if you're asking for my opinion, that's what it is.
and I am. So
And I'm
thank
obviously
you.
happy to give it. So,
Um, well, thank you again for speaking with me. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but
most
um,
of my sales guys have already checked out for the holiday week anyway. So I'm like, I got a whole lot of nothing going on right now. So it's good. It's fine. It's been good.
um, but yeah, thank you again.
Okay.
What was I going to say? Oh, my colleague Olivia is going to be following up with you. Is going to send you the digital gift card via email,
Right.
probably in a few days,
Okay.
as a thank you
Sure.
for your time. But yeah, I really appreciate everything you told me today,
Okay.
and appreciate you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you. Have a
Yeah,
good weekend.
thanks.
All
Bye,
right.
David.
Bye. All right. So that was my interview with Facebook. They wanted to do some market research from a user and give feedback on the platform. I have no idea if it's going to go anywhere, but there you were able to hear it and actually took my feedback. So we'll see what happens. And I'm getting paid $100 basically to tell them all the things that I think are wrong with Facebook. But the fact that they were asking and sat there listening and had a good conversation, I wish there was more of that. Um, there should be more of that. You should be able to have open dialogue, and that's what social media is supposed to be about. And it's unfortunately what it stopped being. So, but hey, they asked for my opinion, paid me for my time, paid $100 an hour. So there you have it. I go ahead and upload this and see if people find it interesting. Anyway, have a good one.